In my article, Other Islanders on Lesbos, a retrospective look at the history of lesbians in Cuba, I insisted on recreating the intimate life of a female couple living in a province at the beginning of the current century. Being a believer as I am, that whatever is private becomes public and has a definite impact on society, I argued that something had changed in that Cuba where I was a lesbian young adult, a positive change, I thought. Even when, at the same time, I was confronting in my article the revolutionary era and the way the gay community was mistreated in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, I was able to foresee an emerging possibility. Perhaps in Cuba, in the 21st century, the only participants in reality who continued to marginalize minorities were those in power.
The other thing that I realized was that if you were a person of privilege in Cuba, and privilege in Cuba is defined very differently than privilege here, because privilege here can frequently be bought, and in Cuba, the currency isn't necessarily monetary. The currency is a little perverse. You're privileged if you have a connection to the revolutionary structure. You're privileged if you are a member of a family that is appreciated by the revolutionary structure. You're privileged if you are from a historically important family. You are privileged if you are internationally known in some positive way that reflects on Cuba. And you're privileged if you have some sort of value to Cuba to the new reforms, and there's always new reforms in Cuba. I mean, I love people talking about new reforms because Cuba is constantly going through new reforms. It's like the same BS. And of course, my girlfriend and I, were extremely privileged people because we were, first of all, women, so our sexuality was amusing, erotic to everyone. The construction workers loved us. We were both white-skinned, and I think that's important to say. We were both relatively feminine, and that's also important to say. And we were untouchable by virtue of who we were in Cuban society. I was a writer of some notoriety in the United States, and I worked for an important media company for a lot of my time, the Tribune Media Company, and my girlfriend was not only an internationally known performance artist, but also the daughter of the Vice Minister of Tourism, who had at different times during the course of the revolution had different important jobs. So we were not going to get hassled. I would see Sara Gonzalez frequently, not because we socialized, because in fact she wouldn't go near us, but I would see her every now and then, and we would sort of check in on each other. And I always sort of used her as a measure of how things were going. And it was fascinating to me that Sarah finally came out in Cuban media in her obituary.